I was around 13 years old when I first discovered it. And on that day, I literally signed a contract with the devil. My first orgasm was, up until that point in my life, the best, most pleasurable experience, the most intense bodily experience that I've ever had in my life. And from that moment, I was literally hooked. And so on the same day, I did it 2 more times. And the days following, it was twice, maybe 3 times a day, until I started to taper down to do it once, twice, every single day for about 3 years straight. And of course, when you're young and you don't have the right influences in your life, you don't have people telling you how bad it is, you just think you're doing a normal thing, right? It's healthy. The doctors tell you, okay, you should do it multiple times a week for prostate health. And so I was like, yeah, I'm doing a good thing. Until I was 16 years old and I had my first sexual encounter. And I like to make this joke where I say I semi-lost my virginity. Why? Because when I went to the girl's house, I was laying there with her, things started to escalate, and there was no life down there. No sense of pleasure, no stimulation, no activity, no life whatsoever. It just didn't wake up. 10 minutes of foreplay went by. I'm in my head, I'm like, why is this not working? It worked last night when I was at home with my hand and the pixels on the screen, so why is it not working right now? Eventually, I managed to calm down and I got it to about 70%. But as I was thrusting, 0 sensation. It didn't feel good at all. And obviously, I didn't finish. So I went home, my head in my hands, thinking, what the fuck happened? Firstly, I know I'm completely straight. And secondly, it works all the time when I'm at home, so why didn't it work with a real woman? And so I went home, and what did I do? I searched it on Google. Why can I finish at home with my hand and not with a real woman? And then I discovered NoFap. This is me at 16 years old, the first time I ever discovered it. And I saw stories of thousands of other men who had been through the exact same experience that I did. Straight men, young men who should be in their prime, healthy, extremely high libido, ready to just penetrate at any given moment. But they were suffering from porn-induced erectile dysfunction. Now, I discovered that I had this at 16 years old. And because I was so traumatized from the experience, my first ever NoFap streak was 17 days. I went 17 days after 3 years straight of every single day, multiple times a day. I went 17 days without it and I felt amazing. But when that 17th day comes, right, the problem with doing long streaks is that you regain sensitivity down there. And so any activity that you do, whether you're running, whether you're walking, and there's a little bit of pressure that's applied to it just gives you an urge and you have to do it, right? So after 17 days, a lot of sexual energy was built up. I came home and I was like, no, I have to release. And the problem with releasing after 17 days is that you have way more sensitivity and the orgasms are just way more intense. And so I was hooked again. Went back to daily fapping. I still had this idea of NoFap in my mind, and so I'd go sometimes 2 days, sometimes 3 days, maximum 4 days without it, and then I'll just relapse again and then reset my counter and then just enter this cycle 24/7 of just 2 days without, relapsing, 3 days without. Every single time I would fail and I had no idea why. And obviously I'm starting to reach this age where I'm meeting women, women are liking me. And so I developed this tactic where if I knew I was going to see a girl, I would schedule it a week in advance and I wouldn't watch P for the whole week so that I can regain some sensitivity and I can perform. But I was never at 100%. I always took a little bit long to finish. It never really felt that good because I was still addicted. And the reason why is because I trained my mind to only get aroused through pixels on a screen, through watching these super edited, hyper stimulating, beautiful models with angles and lighting and perfect edits and cuts. And so when you're in real life with a real girl, if you've never experienced it before, you'll realize that there's no director. You're not with a 10 out of 10 beautiful model. There's no music in the background. There's no screaming. There's no over-exaggerated positions. There's no splits. It's literally just a girl sitting there next to you. She has flaws. She has insecurities. She's not doing tricks. She's just sitting there waiting for you to take control. But you're so used to laying there with just your hand on your phone, you don't know what to do. And most likely, your thing's not working. So what do? You've trained your brain to sit there and watch another man do the act. So when you're put in this position in the first person, you have no idea what to do. You don't know how to take control. You don't even know where to put it. And your expectation for what it's going to be like does not meet reality. And so you're underwhelmed. You've trained your brain to only get aroused through pixels on a screen, through watching another man do the act and not yourself. And so of course, especially during your formative years, during puberty when your brain is its most malleable and you're learning about the world around you, if your only sexual experience is through watching porn, of course when you get to about my age, you're going to be a little bit fucked up. And so if you've been through this before, and there are tens of thousands of stories and anecdotes of men who have been through this, or if you haven't had your first sexual experience and you're addicted to porn, I promise you it's not going to go how you expect it to go if you continue to watch porn every single day. Now, let's talk about NoFap. I've refused to make a video about NoFap on my channel because I find the whole movement corny. I don't believe in it. I don't believe there are superpowers. I just believe that you're completely fucked. And when you start NoFap, you turn back into a normal human being. You don't get superpowers, you just feel great relative to where you were, because it completely fucks up your life. It destroys your motivation. It destroys your sexual energy. It destroys your passion for life as a man. You're literally draining yourself of your life force. Now, I'm not trying to get too spiritual, right? But I genuinely believe that when you fap too much and you ejaculate on a daily basis, you're telling your brain that you're impregnating women every single day. And so there is no incentive for you to improve yourself, because your brain thinks, yeah, this man is passing on his seed every single day. He doesn't need to get strong. He doesn't need to get intelligent. He doesn't need to improve himself anymore because he's already winning at life. Now, the reason why I find NoFap so corny is because at the core of NoFap is this idea, this concept of the streak. The streak is when you count the number of days since you last fapped. I've done many streaks. I've failed many times. And the problem with a streak is what it says about your identity. Now, I'm assuming that 99% of you are not alcoholics. Are you counting the days since you last drank alcohol? No, because you don't identify as an alcoholic. Now, if you're counting the days since you last fapped, that means you're anticipating resetting the streak. If you just change your identity and say, I don't fap anymore, you don't need a streak because you're doing it for the rest of your life. This is why, inherently, NoFap is flawed. Because a lot of people are obsessed with their streak. They're like, okay, it's been 3 days, it's been 4 days, it's been 5 days. They're just anticipating, they're waiting for that day that comes where they have to reset the counter. And it becomes this negative cycle of starting your streak again, building up a little bit, and then starting it from the beginning. Whereas you can just say to yourself, I just don't watch porn anymore. I don't identify as somebody who does it. Now, the only way you can have this identity shift is if you truly believe that you don't need it in your life and that it's not helping you get to where you want to go in life. Now, the first thing that I said in this video was that my first sexual encounter was a complete fail. I semi-lost my virginity because I only had a semi as I was doing it. Now, if you're a young man and you haven't lost your virginity yet, this should be enough to scare you into not watching porn anymore. I promise you, bro, it's destroying your sex drive. It's destroying your ability to perform when you're with a woman for the first time. It also makes you extremely socially awkward. I genuinely believe that when I was younger, I was very shy. And I believe that it's because I was fapping all the time. You know how much guilt and shame and embarrassment comes with this act of fapping. Because once you finished it, you carry that feeling with you throughout life. You know how it feels when you've done it and you have to go to the supermarket. You feel like everyone can sense it on you. And vice versa, when you haven't done it for such a long time, I promise you, when you walk in the street, you have a different sense of confidence. Because you know in yourself that you are now a man. You're not a little boy who is a slave to his desires, who can't control his own actions. You need to be more mature in your head. You need to understand that you don't need it in your life. It's literally, there is no benefit other than the fleeting bit of pleasure that you have. Now, one thing that Stoicism has taught me that helped me get over this addiction is to look at things objectively and stop using your emotions so much. When you look at what porn is and fapping is objectively, then you realize how pointless it is. And so porn is just a bunch of pixels on the screen. Fapping is encasing your D in your hand and moving your hand up and down. And then you have a fleeting temporary spasm of pleasure. And then it's all over. Then you're filled with guilt, then you're filled with shame. It's so pointless. There is no reason for you to be doing it. Now, I know that you've watched hundreds of these videos before. And me telling you to just stop doing it and to grow up and telling you that it's pointless, it's not really going to help. So what can you actually do? Firstly, you have to identify why you watch it in the first place, how you even end up in that situation, especially when you know you're on NoFap and you know you're supposed to have a streak. You need to understand that your brain is extremely intelligent. It will deceive you and trick you into getting what it wants. And so this is the typical cycle that I used to go through. I'd pick up my phone and I'd say, okay, I'm only going on Instagram, knowing that I'm searching for a specific type of content. I'd go on the explore page. Oh, there's a model. I didn't know that was going to be there, but let me just click it anyway just to see what she looks like. And then it starts to suggest more and more models. Then you upgrade from that level of intensity to maybe Reddit. And then half an hour later, you've got mayonnaise all over your bed. You're filled with guilt and shame. You're resetting your counter and the cycle continues. Now, you have to nip it in the bud. As soon as you get the idea to peak, your brain will convince you, oh, I'm just peaking. I'm not actually going to go through with the full act. How many times has that worked? The amount of times I've peaked and it's not ended up in the final thing is 0. Peaking does not exist. Peaking is not allowed. So you need to increase your standards. You need to be more strict on yourself. Don't even allow yourself to peak. And the way you don't allow yourself to peak is to get off the social media sites, because they are the gateway drug to doing the full thing. Most people believe that Instagram and Twitter are innocent. I'm just looking at memes. No, but they know what they're feeding you. They know that these algorithms are specifically tailored to what you like. And so if you like to watch half-naked models, they will feed you that information that will lead you down the rabbit hole, and it will inevitably lead you to relapsing. So reduce your time that you spend on social media and understand that your brain is convincing you to go on it so that you can accidentally stumble across some content. Now, if we go even deeper, how do you stop yourself from accessing these triggers? How do you stop yourself from scrolling through social media? You have to get busy. You have to create a routine. You have to fill your day with activities. I can say about 90% of the time when I've done it, I was in my room, I was all alone, and the amount of friction between me and my phone or me and my computer was so low. If you're in a restaurant, the amount of friction is high because you're not just going to pull out your phone and start doing it there, unless you're a creep and you go to the bathroom, because there are people around you, people holding you accountable, and you will be judged. But when you're in your room, you're all alone, nobody's there, your willpower is at its lowest, it's so easy to access. You've been doing it for the last few years, so like one more time won't hurt. And so you do it. Which is why you need to change your environment. You need to be outside. You need to do things with your life. Go to the gym, do work in a cafe, meet your friends, do anything, but be stuck in your room alone, because that is most of the time when you're going to do it. I know it's hard because I can't just say never go to your room again. So maybe what you do is you leave your bedroom door open so that your family can walk past and see you. Maybe that's what you have to do. I don't know, but you need to implement things into your life that are going to increase the amount of friction, increase the amount of resistance between you and the pornography. Otherwise, you will never stop. If it's easy to access, you will always do it. And let me tell you one more thing. The urges will never go away. As a man, you have sexual energy. You have sexual desires. You want to gratify that sexual desire. And if you don't have a woman that's readily available, the next easiest option is to pick up the phone and to just do it yourself. The urge will never ever go. It will never get easy. And once you understand that, you'll realize that it's on you to conquer the urge. It's on you to learn how to resist, to fill your day and distract yourself from the urges. And so there are a lot of people who say, okay, when you get the urge, just do 10 push-ups, jump in a cold shower, go for a run, go for a walk. Do it. But again, I'm trying to be practical, because I understand that once these feelings arise of the urges and the desire to watch porn, there's no convincing your brain. There's nothing you can say to your brain that's like, all right, cool, let me just go for a walk, and then when we come back, then we'll do it. No, if you want to do it, you want to do it right now, and there is nothing that is stopping you. Your judgment is clouded and you're fully locked in, you're immersed in this world, and you're going to do it. I remember when I was younger, when I made the decision that I was going to do it, sometimes I would be walking home and I'm like, yeah, when I get home, I'm doing it. And there was nothing that I could say to myself to talk me out of doing it. And you lot aren't going to like this, but the main thing that will help you with this is meditation. I've said this so many times in my videos. I'm going to link the video actually up here. Take a step back from the situation and give yourself 5-10 minutes to think, am I doing the right thing? Is it worth resetting this streak for a temporary spasm of pleasure? It's never worth it, because the amount of guilt, the amount of shame, the amount of pain and suffering that you go through as a result of just doing this 5-minute act is not worth it. So shift your identity. don't even try to not watch it. You just don't watch it anymore. You have to tell yourself, I just don't watch it anymore. And the beauty of not watching it, the beauty of having a long streak, is that you will get horny. Your sexual energy will start to increase. But the only way to gratify it is to improve yourself. And when you improve yourself, you start to attract women, and you can have a real life sexual experience. And by that time, you're probably fixed, you've regained your sensitivity, and you'll actually be able to perform well. And you'll have the confidence to carry out the act. I promise you, this is the first and last NoFap video that I'll ever make. Why? Because I find it corny. There's guys on the internet talking about superpowers and women will stare at you. No, that's not how it works. Women won't stare at you because you'll just become a normal guy who isn't addicted to watching women on the internet. Quitting is the first step. Then you shift your identity, and then you replace this activity with more productive things. You start hitting the gym. Maybe you start your business, you start creating content, you start meditating, you start doing all of the self-improvement habits that I preach about on my channel. And you build yourself up into a man, a mature man who isn't a slave to his desires, a mature man who is in control of his emotions, a mature man who no longer watches porn. And one more thing before I end the video. NoFap is all about no longer masturbating. But there's a term called mental masturbation, where you're constantly going down a rabbit hole of self-improvement, of NoFap, of all of these different movements. Watching videos like this, watching videos on NoFap and the timelines and what you can expect and the superpowers, that is mental masturbation. How about rather than watching a NoFap timeline video, you actually experience the timeline yourself? This is mental masturbation. It makes you feel good. It gives you dopamine. It's childish. Stop watching videos about NoFap. It's time to enter the next phase of your life, where your identity is that of a man who no longer cares about NoFap, who no longer watches porn, a man who will improve himself so that he can actually attract women in real life, a man who isn't embarrassed of the things that he does behind closed doors. You no longer want to identify as that person. I was that person. I no longer am that person, and it feels great. It feels amazing. I still get the urges now and then, but once you start meditating, the more mindful you become, the more mature you become, the more masculine you become, you realize that you don't need that stuff in your life. It's childish and it's unnecessary. So this is the last NoFap video I'll ever make. You don't need it in your life. You signed the contract with the devil. It's time to rip up that contract and enter a new phase of your life, a phase of growth, a phase of maturity, a phase of self-improvement, a phase of becoming a man. You're no longer a little boy. Stop being a slave to your sexual desires. It's time to take control of your life. Get off NoFap, shift your identity, forget about the streaks and the timelines and the superpowers, and let's cure this addiction once and for all.